Prince Charles' first day as king detailed as Queen's succession plans ramp up. Prince Charles' first days as king have been set out by a constitutional expert in an interview with Express.co.uk. Prince Charles, 73, has resumed his royal duties after an extended weekend of celebrations for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee to mark her 70 years on the throne. The Prince of Wales received warm wishes from French President Emmanuel Macron in a phone call on Tuesday as the two discussed the Jubilee and the war in Ukraine. In another engagement, on Wednesday, he awarded Sir David Attenborough the Knight Grand Cross of the Order of St. Michael and St. George for his services to broadcasting and conservation. Such engagements continue Charles' recent pattern of taking on royal duties on behalf of Her Majesty, who continues to experience episodic mobility problems. As the monarch's heir apparent, the Prince of Wales will one day succeed her as the British sovereign, with the future king's first days on the throne now laid bare by one of the UK's top constitutional experts. Dr. Robert Morris, who has 40 years of experience in constitutional issues, works at University College London's Constitution Unit, and was previously the Home Office Under-Secretary, responsible for constitutional affairs. He discussed the events that will take place the day after the monarch's death as hundreds of Privy Councillors, including the Prime Minister, meet at the Accession Council in St. James' Palace to proclaim King Charles as the new sovereign. Speaking to Express.co.uk, Dr. Morris said, "Within 24 hours, there's a special meeting of members of the Privy Council who are augmented by various other worthies, including, for example, representatives of the city as is traditional. The Lord Mayor will be there and all members of the Privy Council. At the moment there are just over 700 of them, which is a much larger number than were present in 1952 when King George VI died, and his daughter, the Queen, was of course then in Kenya. So, there'll be a sort of management problem of how to deal with all the numbers, which would also include probably the High Commissioners from the realms, that is the Commonwealth countries where the Queen is also head of state, as well as head of the Commonwealth. And what the Succession Council does is, it doesn't make Charles king, it proclaims that he is already king." He added, "There's a great fanfare of announcements and there are events in all the provincial capitals to have the proclamation proclaimed and so on." Dr. Morris went on to explain how a second part of the Accession Council will then take place, involving only Charles and Privy Councillors. He, Charles, does two principal things. He makes a personal declaration, which is very much a personal affair. It has three main elements really. 1. The great regret of course of the passing of his mother and mention no doubt of her values and her successes. Secondly, he's saying that he will, of course, observe the Constitution and do his best to preserve it. And thirdly, he will make some remarks probably on the lines that it's a heavy burden, which indeed it is. Details of the government's planning for after the Queen's death were leaked to Politico in September. Codenamed Operation London Bridge, the documents set out how Charles will succeed his mother to the throne. On the day of her death, referred to as Day, the Prince of Wales will give a broadcast to the nation. There will also be a service of remembrance held at London's St. Paul's Cathedral, attended by the Prime Minister and other key figures. The following day, the Prime Minister is set to have a private audience with King Charles. September. Codenamed Operation London Bridge, the documents set out how Charles will succeed his mother to the throne. On the day of her death, referred to as D-Day, the Prince of Wales will give a broadcast to the nation. There will also be a service of remembrance held at London's St. Paul's Cathedral, attended by the Prime Minister and other key figures. The following day, the Prime Minister is set to have a private audience with King Charles.